There is a strange truth about human beings. Long before someone learns your story, your values, your intelligence, or your character, they have already made a decision about you. Not a complete decision, not an accurate decision, but a powerful one. A decision that silently shapes every interaction that follows. And the most disturbing part? Most people don't even realize they are doing it. Imagine walking into a room filled with strangers. Nobody speaks. Nobody introduces themselves. Nobody shares their achievements, their struggles, or their dreams. Yet within seconds, opinions begin forming. Someone looks trustworthy. Someone appears successful. Someone seems weak. Someone appears important. The room has become a courtroom, and everyone is both judge and jury. No evidence has been presented, yet verdicts are already being delivered. This is the invisible power of first impressions. And whether we like it or not, it influences friendships, careers, relationships, opportunities, and sometimes entire lives. Let me tell you a story. A young man named Daniel graduated from university with excellent grades. He was intelligent, hardworking, honest, the kind of person who always prepared thoroughly. When Daniel was invited to an important job interview, he spent days studying the company. He memorized industry trends. He practiced answers. He reviewed every possible question. On the morning of the interview, he arrived 10 minutes early. Everything seemed perfect. But there was one problem. Daniel was nervous. As he entered the office, his shoulders were slightly hunched. His handshake felt uncertain. His voice trembled during his introduction. The interview lasted only 30 minutes. A week later, he received a rejection email. Months afterward, Daniel discovered something surprising. The interviewer had written a note during the first 2 minutes. The note read, "Appears lacking in confidence." 2 minutes. That was all it took. The rest of the interview became a search for evidence supporting that first impression. Every hesitation seemed like proof. Every pause confirmed the assumption. Every nervous gesture strengthened the belief. His knowledge was impressive. His preparation was exceptional. But the first impression had already built a lens through which everything else was interpreted. This happens every day. Not because people are evil, not because they are intentionally unfair, but because the human brain is designed for speed. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors had to make quick decisions. Friend or enemy? Safe or dangerous? Trustworthy or suspicious? The brain became a machine for rapid judgment. The problem is that the modern world is far more complex than the ancient world. Yet our brains still use ancient shortcuts, and those shortcuts often create illusions. Consider another story. A woman named Sarah entered a luxury hotel wearing simple clothing after a long flight. Her hair was messy. She looked exhausted. As she approached the reception desk, the employee barely made eye contact. His smile was forced. His tone lacked warmth. A subtle judgment had already occurred. What the employee did not know was that Sarah owned multiple successful businesses and was considering booking a major corporate event worth thousands of dollars. Because of a first impression, an opportunity nearly disappeared. One appearance, one assumption, one costly mistake. This is why first impressions are so powerful. People rarely see reality. They see interpretations. They see stories their minds create. And once a story is formed, it becomes surprisingly difficult to change. Psychologists sometimes refer to this as the halo effect, when one visible trait influences the way people perceive everything else. If someone appears confident, people often assume they are competent. If someone appears successful, people often assume they are intelligent. If someone appears attractive, people often assume they possess positive qualities unrelated to appearance. The reverse is also true. One negative impression can spread like a shadow over every other quality. Imagine two salespeople entering separate meetings. The first enters calmly. They smile naturally. Their posture is relaxed. Their voice is steady. The second enters with visible anxiety. Their words are rushed. Their movements appear uncertain. Even if both individuals possess identical knowledge, clients may respond differently. Why? Because people do not evaluate information objectively. Information is filtered through perception, and perception is often born in the first moments of contact. Think about your own life. Have you ever met someone and instantly disliked them, only to discover months later they were kind, loyal, and trustworthy? Or perhaps you met someone who seemed charming and impressive at first, only to learn later that the image was an illusion. The first impression was not reality. It was merely a prediction. But predictions have consequences. A teacher may unconsciously expect more from one student than another. A manager may trust one employee more quickly. A customer may choose one business over another. A potential partner may decide whether to continue a conversation. All because of a judgment formed before any meaningful evidence existed. Now here is where things become even more fascinating. People often believe they are resistant to these influences. They believe they judge others fairly. They believe they wait for facts. Yet research repeatedly suggests otherwise. Human beings are storytelling creatures. The moment we encounter someone new, our minds begin constructing narratives. A confident walk becomes a story. A tone of voice becomes a story. Clothing becomes a story. Facial expressions become a story. And once the story begins, the brain naturally searches for evidence that supports it. Imagine wearing a pair of tinted glasses. Everything you see becomes colored by the lens. First impressions work the same way. They become invisible glasses through which future behavior is interpreted. This explains why some people seem to gain trust effortlessly, while others struggle to be heard. It explains why opportunities sometimes appear unfairly distributed. It explains why perception can become as influential as reality itself. The most successful individuals understand this principle, not because they manipulate people, but because they understand human nature. They understand that before people listen to words, they observe signals. Before people evaluate competence, they notice confidence. Before people examine character, they interpret behavior. And whether those interpretations are accurate or not, they often shape what happens next. The invisible power of first impressions is not magic. It is not destiny. It is simply human psychology at work. A silent force operating beneath awareness. A force that influences decisions, relationships, careers, and opportunities every single day. And once you begin noticing it, you will see it everywhere. In boardrooms, in classrooms, in friendships, in business deals, in interviews, in romantic relationships, the invisible judgments, the silent assumptions, the stories people create within seconds, stories that can open doors or close them before a single word has truly been spoken. The strange thing about first impressions is that most people spend their lives trying to change the opinions of others after those opinions have already been formed. It's like trying to redirect a river after it has chosen its path. Possible? Yes. Easy? Not even close. Because once a person believes they understand who you are, they stop looking for new information. Instead, They start looking for confirmation. A man walks into a workplace on his first day. He's quiet, reserved. He keeps to himself. Within a week, some co-workers begin describing him as unfriendly, not because he insulted anyone, not because he caused problems, but because silence was interpreted as distance. Now imagine that same man spends the next month helping others whenever they need assistance. Many people will still secretly view him through the original label: quiet, cold, unapproachable. The first impression continues influencing their judgment. This is one of the most dangerous psychological traps in human relationships. Labels. Once people assign a label, they begin fitting reality into it. A confident person becomes a leader. A nervous person becomes weak. A wealthy person becomes intelligent. A poor person becomes irresponsible. A charismatic person becomes trustworthy. Reality becomes secondary. The label becomes primary. And often, people don't realize they're doing it. A few years ago, a businessman told a story about two candidates applying for the same position. The first candidate arrived in an expensive suit. Perfect posture. Polished appearance. Every movement communicated confidence. The second candidate arrived dressed simply. Nothing remarkable. No dramatic entrance. No expensive watch. No luxury accessories. When the interviews ended, most managers preferred the first candidate. Yet after reviewing performance tests, something surprising happened. The second candidate had significantly outperformed the first. Knowledge, problem-solving, decision-making, everything pointed toward the second individual. Yet many managers admitted they initially expected the opposite. Why? Because appearance created expectation. Expectation created bias. Bias influenced judgment. This pattern appears everywhere. Humans are constantly predicting. The brain hates uncertainty. It wants quick answers. It wants certainty, even when certainty doesn't exist. That is why first impressions feel so convincing. They create the illusion of understanding. But understanding and assumption are not the same thing. A traveler once shared a story about meeting an elderly man on a train. The old man wore worn-out clothes. His shoes looked decades old. He sat quietly by the window. Most passengers ignored him. Some barely acknowledged his existence. Hours later, conversation revealed something unexpected. The elderly man had spent 40 years as a respected surgeon. He had saved thousands of lives. His experiences were extraordinary. His wisdom was immense. Yet for most of the journey, people saw only old clothing. The lesson was simple. People often confuse visible signals with invisible value. And that mistake can cost them opportunities, friendships, partnerships, and knowledge. Now think about social media. Perhaps nowhere in history have first impressions become more powerful. A photograph, a profile picture, a short biography, a few seconds of content. People form conclusions instantly. Successful, unsuccessful, interesting, boring, intelligent, unintelligent, trustworthy, suspicious. Millions of judgments occurring every hour, yet most of these judgments are based on fragments. Tiny pieces of information. The modern world has accelerated an ancient psychological habit. And because of this, perception has become a form of currency. People spend years building personal brands, not necessarily because they want attention, but because they understand something important. Visibility influences opportunity. Whether fair or unfair, perception affects reality. Imagine two restaurants opening on the same street. One restaurant looks clean, organized, and welcoming from the outside. The other serves identical food but appears neglected. Which restaurant attracts more customers? Most people already know the answer. The food quality hasn't been tested. The service hasn't been experienced. Yet customers make assumptions based on appearance. The exterior creates expectations about the interior. Human beings do this with people too. We constantly use external clues to estimate internal qualities. Sometimes those estimates are correct. Many times they are not. And yet the habit continues because it is faster than careful evaluation. Speed often wins over accuracy. This is where the darker side of first impressions begins to reveal itself. Some individuals understand these psychological shortcuts very well, and they use them strategically. Not all influence is honest. Not all confidence is genuine. Not all charm reflects character. History is filled with people who mastered appearance while hiding destructive intentions. Think about the manipulator who enters every room with a smile. They remember names. They tell stories. They make others feel important. At first, everyone loves them. People describe them as magnetic, charismatic, trustworthy. Yet months later, the truth emerges. The kindness was calculated. The charm was strategic. The confidence was a mask. The first impression became a weapon. This is why wisdom requires looking beyond appearances. Because some of the most dangerous individuals understand how easily humans are influenced by presentation. A wolf that looks like a wolf rarely succeeds. A wolf dressed like a shepherd is far more effective. This principle appears in everyday life. Scammers often appear helpful. Manipulators often appear caring. Deceptive people often appear confident. Meanwhile, genuinely kind individuals may appear shy. Truly intelligent people may appear humble. Honest people may appear ordinary. Reality often hides beneath the surface, and surface impressions rarely tell the complete story. Consider the story of Emma. Emma joined a new company and immediately noticed a coworker named Michael. Michael was loud, confident, always speaking during meetings, always presenting opinions. Most employees assumed he was the most capable person in the department. Then deadlines started arriving. Projects became more complex. Pressure increased. And something interesting happened. Michael talked constantly, but delivered little. Meanwhile, another employee named David quietly completed difficult tasks without seeking attention. Months later, everyone recognized who truly contributed value. But it took time. The first impression had pointed in one direction. Reality pointed somewhere else. This teaches an important lesson. Confidence attracts attention. Competence earns respect. The two are not always the same, yet people frequently confuse them because confidence is visible. Competence often isn't. Human beings are naturally drawn toward what they can immediately see. And first impressions are built almost entirely from visible information. A voice, a face, a posture, a smile, a handshake, an outfit, a glance. Tiny signals creating massive conclusions. Now imagine meeting someone at the worst moment of their life. Perhaps they recently lost a loved one. Perhaps they are exhausted. Perhaps they are facing financial difficulties. Perhaps anxiety is overwhelming them. You meet them on that particular day, that particular hour, that particular moment. And based on that limited experience, you decide who they are. Do you see the problem? The version of a person you encounter may not represent the person at all. It may simply represent a moment. Yet moments often become identities inside the minds of observers. This is why wise people resist immediate judgment. They understand that human beings are complicated. Nobody can be fully understood in 60 seconds. Nobody can be accurately summarized by a single interaction, and nobody should be permanently defined by a temporary moment. Unfortunately, the world rarely operates with such patience. The world moves fast. People move fast. Judgments move fast. Which means first impressions continue shaping outcomes every day. A sales opportunity, a friendship, a promotion, a partnership, a relationship. Doors open, doors close, sometimes because of substance, sometimes because of perception, and often because people never took enough time to discover the difference. As the years pass, many individuals learn a painful lesson. Being good is important, but being understood is equally important. You may possess honesty, skill, intelligence, and integrity. Yet if people never see those qualities, they cannot respond to them. This doesn't mean becoming fake. It doesn't mean creating a false image. It means recognizing that communication begins long before words. Every action sends signals. Every behavior communicates something. Every interaction influences perception. The question is whether those signals accurately represent who you are. Because if they don't, others may spend months or even years misunderstanding you. And by the time they finally see the truth, opportunities may already have disappeared. The invisible power of first impressions is not merely about influence. It is about awareness. Awareness that people judge quickly. Awareness that appearances matter. Awareness that assumptions are powerful. And awareness that what people see first often becomes the foundation upon which everything else is built. The wisest individuals learn two lessons simultaneously. First, they understand the importance of managing the signals they send into the world. Second, they refuse to become prisoners of appearances when evaluating others. They understand that every human being contains a story far larger than a first impression. A story hidden beneath clothing, status, confidence, fear, success, failure, and appearance. A story that can only be discovered through time. And time remains the one thing first impressions can never replace. Because while first impressions may open the book, only patience reveals the chapters hidden inside. Because while first impressions may open the book, only patience reveals the chapters hidden inside. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. The invisible power of first impressions is not simply a lesson about how other people see you. It is also a lesson about how you see other people. Throughout this journey, we have explored the silent judgments that occur within seconds. The assumptions that form before conversations begin. The perceptions that influence careers, friendships, relationships, and opportunities. We have seen how a confident posture can create trust, how a nervous moment can create doubt, how appearance can shape expectation, and how expectation can shape reality. But beneath all of these observations lies a deeper truth. Human beings are far more complicated than first impressions allow. Every person you meet is fighting battles you cannot see. Every person carries experiences you know nothing about. Every person possesses strengths, weaknesses, fears, dreams, failures, and stories hidden beneath the surface. Yet our minds constantly attempt to simplify people into categories: strong or weak, smart or foolish, successful or unsuccessful, trustworthy or suspicious, leader or follower. We do this because certainty feels comfortable. The human mind craves quick answers. It prefers conclusions over questions. It prefers labels over mysteries. And yet the most valuable truths in life are often hidden behind uncertainty. The most loyal friend may initially appear distant. The most capable employee may initially appear quiet. The most intelligent person in the room may speak the least. the most dangerous individual may appear charming. The most genuine person may appear ordinary. Reality rarely announces itself immediately. Reality reveals itself slowly. And that is why patience remains one of the rarest and most powerful forms of wisdom. In today's world, patience is disappearing. People scroll through hundreds of faces every day, hundreds of opinions, hundreds of images, hundreds of stories. Judgments are made faster than ever before, sometimes in seconds, sometimes in milliseconds. A photograph becomes a personality. A headline becomes a conclusion. A short interaction becomes a permanent label. The modern world encourages quick thinking. But quick thinking is not always accurate thinking.